What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode here. Today we are diving right back into the C10 project. So there's been a little bit of a hiatus here. If you guys have been following along, I appreciate y'all staying tuned here. So we had about a 2-week interval since the last C10 video. So the transmission was dropped off. There was a lot of ins and outs. I had to get the bearings for the crank. I had to get the exhaust fixed because I took the truck to an exhaust shop and had them weld up the pipes on there, and the truck set so low I really never got underneath there to fully check the welds out, and I am not impressed with them. I mean, the reason why I didn't do it was because I didn't have anything to get the truck up high enough off the ground to where I could roll around and weld the pipe and make sure the angles looked good. But hindsight, I should have just saved my money. But you live and learn, right? So, transmission, went to the transmission shop. I told the guy it really wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't my everyday driver, but if he could get it pumped out, he did a good job. I'm not upset about that. It went a little bit longer than I expected, but again, he did a flawless job. No knock. Everybody's busy. I get that, right? So moving along, today we're going to get that installed and hopefully get everything mocked up to where we need, because I don't want to tie this lift up too much. They're needing it for another project, so we want to get in and out with the truck there. So main focus is to get the bearing installed, get the pan put back up, sealed off, no issues there, get the flex plate put on, which I do believe that's the same. Yeah, we use the same flex plate on that. And then transmission, converter, get everything all buttoned up. We have to relocate the cross member for the transmission because it's going to be a little bit different, but luckily the mount is the same exact, so we don't have no change there. And then once that's done, we can pull a final measurement on the drive shaft, get that sent off to get cut down, and then it's pretty much wiring. Once we get the truck off the lift, we can get the trans controller wired into it, get that tucked away in the dash because we really don't want any of the wires to be fully visible. We want to make this a halfway clean deal. And then it's test and tune. So you know the deal. Let's get to it. Let's roll that action. So we're here at the shop. We went ahead and got the truck on the lift, got some stuff moved around so we could get working on this thing. I'll show you where we're at right now. So we got our rear cap pulled off with the inner adapter piece, and then these are going to be our new bearing. So we cleaned up the spot that was on the crank right there. It was a little high spot, so we had to clean that up. We've got our top moon cleaned off and shoved back in there. So we're going to kind of move quick here because I don't want that to set up and not be in the wrong spot here. So as you can see, I've got the other bearing starting to push out. So we're going to get this top piece out of the plastic and use this to help drive it around for the top half. And then we're going to get the lower half put on with the cap and get these torqued down, as well as we're going to check our torque specs on the caps that have not been messed with to make sure that they're in the right order as well. So we're going to go ahead and jump to that. Alright, so we went ahead and got the new one in. So it was kind of hard. I couldn't use this one to push it through like I had mentioned because there's a tab here. So you can't start on this side, nor can you push this side all the way through because it's only stepped just a little bit. So that's only going to have a little step in it. So, but you can pretty much push these in by hand once you get them past a certain spot. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pushed in like so. If you do have to use something to push on, use a brass drift so you're not going to scratch anything. So I can obviously see this is not hurting the crank. It's just a little brass drift here. And then we're gonna drive this all the way until that thing bottoms out. So. Alright, I may need to get the hammer for the last segment of that. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-apologize. I kind of had to do that in a sweeping motion and forgot to set the camera on time-lapse. But so we got the second half of the adapter plate put into the main cap. I went ahead and put silicone all around there. It's this stuff right here. It's a RTV, but it's the 5699. Stuff's pretty good. Definitely have had no issues with it. So I went ahead and got the cap tightened up there with the new lower half on the bearing and tightened these up by hand, just with our hand ratchet. So I can't find the torque specs online, so I'm going to go on to their computer to see if we look up on all data if we can get a torque spec for a 4-bolt main. Then once we get that cinched down, I'll go ahead and get the oil pump put back on, which is going to go right here. And I'll clean the mating surfaces up for the oil pan, get the oil pan cleaned out one more good time, and then we will get the gasket on it so we can get these two sandwiched together. Well, moving right along here, got the oil pan put on with the gasket. You can see we definitely didn't want any leaks, so we double checked our sealing surfaces and made sure we got enough silicone on those. All I did was I just wiped a thin coat on the top and bottom of this seal, and then this was a one piece, but we went ahead and put some in the corners here as well. And then for once in my lifetime on my own projects, we went ahead and torqued the bolts down for the pan in the order, and then we went ahead and marked them, identifying that they were finished up. So from here we're gonna go ahead and drop this thing back down to get this bolt in, and then we will go from there. So we got the new transmission on the stand, but we're gonna have to rob these fittings out of this case. These are going to be a barb style, and we just had a clamp on them. The fittings that came out of this case are going to be a quick disconnect, and we're not running that style. So I'm going to pop both of these out, just kind of get them cleaned up. We'll get the fittings switched over, and then all I got to do is just pop that dipstick housing with a tube off of there, and we can go ahead and get it lined up, and also throw our converter in. So we'll do a quick time lapse on getting these pulled, and then we'll get to shoving her in.
So I'm sure, as you guys could see in the time lapse, that I was kind of struggling getting this thing in. So if you look, our alignment dowel, here, screwdriver here. So if you see, our alignment dowel is right there. It goes into our hole there, but our header is already hitting this piece right here. Now, of course, on our other transmission, I was impatient and went ahead and cut this off. Was unnecessary. I'm thinking we just may have to massage this part of the header just a little bit so it can slide over that piece there. And then what I was messing with earlier was I had to get that bolt back in the motor mount because the motor was pitched so we could get this oil pan out. So we got that side done. We just got to throw the nut back on that bolt. So I'm going to try and finagle with this for a little bit, and once I get that in there, we can go ahead and put all our bolts all the way around and then get our converter bolts in. So transmission is officially in. We got all the bolts in and tightened down. So what we've got at the moment is we had to run to the hardware store to go get bolts for this back mount here, because the bolts we had were for a standard tail shaft housing and these are going to be metric. So went ahead and got bolts. And what else did we get? Oh, so the cross member here is going to be a little different, and we're going to end up having to run it on the bottom side versus the lip being on the inside. So I went ahead and got some collars to space that out. So that's our next step to this puzzle here. We also got a measurement for the drive shaft and drop that off at the drive shaft shop so he can get that shortened, and we'll get that back hopefully tomorrow morning. Alright, well, on this note, I think we're going to end up calling it for the day. So we got the frame stepped out on both sides for this to set up. We've got our bushings that we're going to end up putting in there, but I'm going to need a little bit different washer to get on the bottom side, because I didn't accommodate for the slot on these. So a hardware store is closed that I get most of my stuff for the day, so we'll just go ahead and call it. Drive shaft was dropped off, I think I had mentioned earlier, to the drive shaft shop, so that'll be shortened. We can grab that hopefully mid-morning. The only thing we've got left, I'm going to go ahead and cut the zip tie on these cooler lines and get them ran over to here. I did question this line right here previously because it seemed kind of spongy, but I looked up the rating on that hose and it is okay for transmission fluid, so I think I'm going to leave it alone. But all we're going to have to do is just run these to here, put the barbs on them, we'll be done there, and the dipstick can go right in its spot. I can actually do that right now. Hey, look at that. Good morning. It is another day. So we are headed to the hardware store because the washers that I grabbed yesterday were a little too small. So the cutout in the cross member, the washer pretty much just fits over it. So I want to get a body washer so we can not have to worry about those things maybe dropping into the groove there. So other than that, we've got so far in my little mental checklist, we've got the bolts to finish putting back in. We've got the trans controller to wire up, which I believe I'm going to do that kind of at a last state there. We've got the cable bracket for the shifter to hook up, or mount and hook up, which I wanted to leave that for a segment because I wanted to show a little bit more depth about that part. I just didn't want to install it and say, hey, here we go. And then we've got fluids to put in. So I did want to lower the truck down yesterday because I had no way to support the transmission. So we went ahead and left it in the air, but we've got fluids to put in and hopefully we can fire it back up. One thing I failed to mention yesterday was when you are installing bearings like we were doing, I kind of spray everything down when I install new just out of habit, but it's always good practice to always spray them down with a lubricant, and I didn't mention that. So I just didn't want you guys to think that I put those bearings in dry. I did spray them down. They are not dry. So again, the motor's not a fresh rebuild, so I mean it would get oiled pretty quick, but you just don't want to run the risk of running a bearing dry for, you know, a split second and causing damage, especially if that's what you literally just fixed. So we did spray it down. Don't worry, we're good there. And anyways, that's about it. We're on our bumpy, loud ride to Ace Hardware. We're gonna grab us some washers and some bolts for the torque converter, because I did forget those too. And we'll be on our merry little way. All right, so we got the cross member finished bolted up. So this is our collars that we were talking about. So the only reason why I spaced this down, I had plenty of room that I've trimmed out here to come up. But my concern was the yoke on this side right here hitting on this section. So what I did was I brought the whole thing down, and then we have the ability to space this up, which we've got the plates for this to run this up, and we've got plenty of room on the top side there to where we can shim this up and get the yoke, or the spline side of this, the slip yoke, to not hit here if that's going to be an issue. So I just wanted to think ahead before we got this fully bolted up here and then we've got an issue. So again, grade 8 bolts, everything's strong. I'm not concerned about that part of it. Other than that, we're going to jump to the cooler lines. We've got plenty of room to bring these here. We just got to cut that zip tie, and then same thing with this, that will go there. Our heat shield is good there. On this side, we're gonna put this bracket. So B&M gave us the instructions on how to do this. So the old one bolted here and here, and it kind of hung down right here. Actually, I'm sorry, opposite. It hung up here because it was gonna hook to the controller here for your position on the dash, the sensor to tell you where you're, what gear you're in. So on this one, they've got two. You've got this bracket, and then they give you collars, and then they're gonna go on the bottom side. So I believe it goes here and here, which if we lay the bracket up, we can see it's gonna go right about there. And then they give you the collars to keep it off of this pan, because otherwise you'd have to cut the edge of this pan off. So we're not doing that. And then I've got the linkage to switch this over as well, but I'll do that here in a little bit. So yeah, we're gonna jump to that, get this all buttoned up. We're waiting on the drive shaft hopefully today, and all we've got is just trinkety things. I do have to put the converter bolts in, so I will do that. And then I'm pretty sure on this transmission I have the inspection cover, so once everything, I put some miles on it, we don't have any issues, I will be putting that inspection cover back on, because it just looks a lot cleaner when you're underneath here. So here we go. All right, we've got cooler lines hooked back up, zip tied out of the way. This is the brackets back on there. This is hooked up. We just got this setting here because I have to make the adjustment when the truck is on the ground. I gotta check the throw from park into L. We've got our starter bolted back up. We've got the converter bolts in and tight. And that should be it for down here at the moment.
it's another day again. So quick recap on yesterday. We got the transmission in the truck. We've got the cooler lines hooked up, converter bolts in, tightened, starters back in. We got fluid in the transmission and in the engine. We're gonna have to top the transmission off because I ran out of fluid, and I may or may not have accidentally, well, I didn't accidentally, I started the truck and forgot that the drive shaft was not in the vehicle, so it puked a bunch of transmission fluid out the tail shaft. No big deal, pump works, that's a plus. So we ran out of time, not so much time yesterday, but we waited around for the drive shaft guy to call to say, hey, your drive shaft's done. We dropped it off the day before and it was supposed to be done. Is what it is. It's not life or death, but I just feel like I really want to drive this truck, and so everything is taking its sweet time. Today, actually right now, we are going to go grab that drive shaft, get it put in the vehicle, and then all I've got left is to hook up the shift linkage. I didn't really know where, so on that particular linkage setup for the 4L80, they're similar from the Turbo 400, but there's alignment holes on the shift linkage, so it's got a forward, center, and R for like rear. You have to put the linkage into the right hole, so we wanted to make sure that got put in the right spot, because otherwise it wouldn't shift properly. It has to have the right throw to be able to shift. So I did some online hunting last night, which was fine. It gave me a little bit of time to figure out where it needs to go. From what I can see, it needs to go into the front hole, so we're gonna get that put in officially, and then from there we're gonna milk it back to the house. Once it's back here, I'm gonna wire up the trans controller, get that all buttoned up. I just didn't want to finish it over at his shop because I know he's got cars coming in and out, and I really want to wire this thing up one and done, and I don't want to be rushing myself to get this thing done so I'm not in his way. I can't thank him enough for letting me use the lift. Again, I'm gonna throw another shout out at the end of this video. He's been super busy lately, and he didn't hesitate to let me use the back lift. We had to push a car on and off, but you know, he definitely was like, no, go ahead, and helped me with getting the truck on and off. So again, thank you for that. So yeah, we're gonna get right to it. We're gonna go get that drive shaft. We're gonna get to installing. So without further ado, here's today. Well, we fast forward a lot of steps. Truck is pulled out to the front. We got some fluid in her. Everything should be good for right now. We do not have the trans controller hooked up. I am going to try and milk this thing to the house. That way we can do this under the carport, because it's beginning to rain, and well, I've already left this thing out in the rain way too many times. So I want to try and drive this thing this weekend, and that means I got to do some wiring. So we are going to see if this thing starts. Hopefully, well, I know it starts, but hopefully it runs and drives. So without further ado, by the way, we have open headers, so she's a little spicy. Oh yeah, body. Okay. So we just topped the transmission fluid off for the second time. I think it's got hopefully 7.5, 8 quarts in it. That's park. That's reverse. Helps if we air the back end up. Sounds good. not hit the mini truck. Wow, that's loud. All right, well, here we go. What is up, y'all? So, I'm wearing another shirt. It means it's another day. We got the truck back to the house. It started raining yesterday. After I let it cool down, it started torrential downpouring. So, I really didn't feel like getting into that. So today, we've got the truck here. We've got it on blocks. We got underneath there. We got the trans controller pulled out of the old truck that's in the back. We had to do a little bit of soldering this morning and got rid of some other stuff. So the controller is now mounted inside the cab, but the problem we were having is this is the plug that has to go through the firewall, and well, I don't want to cut a big hole just to fit this plug through there just to have this. The other end is just as equally as sized. I used a tape measure and measured it. It's about 2 inch overall. I don't want to cut a 2 inch hole through here. So I'm gonna unpin this whole harness as we are doing. So I started making a list, 1 through 36. I'm gonna get them all pulled out, but kind of killing two birds with one stone here. My OCD was kicking in when I'm looking at, even though I just resoldered this piece right here, I'm not gonna use this portion of it. I'm also not gonna use, have to use that, but like this, we're not using this plug. So what I think I'm gonna do is, I'm still gonna keep the notes of it, but I'm gonna unpin it out of the harness. If I ever need to add it, I can just pop this connector back on, plug them right back into their spot and have it again. I just don't want a bunch of coiled up, like I've done so far. I don't want a bunch of coiled up pieces hanging underneath the dash. I'm just gonna run out of room. So we're gonna go ahead and start unpinning that. I'll do you guys a favor and time lapse that, because boy is that gonna suck. So here we go. So we've got all the wires tucked into here now. So if we climb under here, you can see we've got the trans controller mounted upside down along with other stuff here. It looks kind of crowded, but when we're done, this will all zip tie up and look pretty nice. But so the plug's gonna come in from here, from the bottom side. We popped a hole, or I should say we just used a step bit and got this opened up a little bit more. So all our wires are gonna come out of here and then get them kind of laid out right. We're going to put them back into the harness and then have them plug in just like so. And then we'll have this kind of zip tied and let it flow into this harness right here. Eventually, when the AC box goes on this firewall, that'll also kind of help everything you know, stay up and get covered, so you really won't see the majority of this. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw some pieces of tape on this to kind of keep everything even, and we're gonna start pinning this back into the harness so we can get this wired up properly. The only thing I have to really wire is the switched side, which is going to be on this bus bar, and then the hot is going to end up going back out and tying into another bar out there. So that's hooked directly up to the battery this time, unlike what we accidentally did for our ignition box there, where I accidentally ran this completely out or onto a switched bus bar when this was supposed to be constant hot, which of course it was on my own stuff. I wouldn't do this on a customer's stuff, but I just kind of got ahead of myself. So rambling, gonna go ahead and get this buttoned up and we'll come back when it's finished. All right, so a little bit of time has gone by. I got the trans controller installed. I actually went and drove this thing and realized this thing is doing weird things. So I was looking at the handheld and it was saying that it was in second gear, which didn't make sense. And it was also throwing a transmission temp code. So I'm like, well, why is this thing throwing a trans temp code? Well, previously, I will backtrack a little bit. I went ahead and ordered a harness for this transmission, because an internal harness that connects to the valve body. Reason being was that was not replaced by the transmission guy. I'm not upset about it. It is what it is. Kind of sucks because he was already right there, but it is what it is, right? So to save you the enjoyment of that, because that was not enjoyable at all, dropped the pan, got that thrown in there. It has a built-in temp sensor inside the harness there. So plugged everything back in, thing still reads a trans temp code, and it's still saying that it's in second gear. So go back and forth. I'm like, what is going on with this thing? Maybe when I pinned this thing, maybe I put a pin in the wrong spot. So I went ahead and pulled up the wiring schematic, and from the TCI trans controller to the female plug, or I should actually say it's the male side plug on the transmission itself, those colors should be pretty much corresponding from color to color. They were not. So I was like, that's weird. Why are these not right? Well, I grabbed the plug because it's supposed to be, keyed, and it goes in one way. I had the plug 180 out. So I flipped it, and now the colors matched, and when you know it, my code went away and it didn't read second gear. Now, I didn't throw a part, and this wasn't by mistake. This thing did need a harness because it was leaking out of the pins on the plug. I'm sure it was one of the original harness that was in this transmission, and transmission was a 97, so it was due needed. But yeah, got that thrown in, no more leaking, got the pins fixed, so no more code, no more saying that we're in second gear, so that's a plus. So to make a long story short, we fixed that. I feel really good about that. We've put some miles on this since. Thing runs flawless. I actually like manually shifting it. You can put it in drive and it'll bang through the gears accordingly. But for me, aside from not having a manual valve body in it, I just like manually shifting it. It's just, again, it's a preference of mine. All in all, I am super stoked about this 4L80 swap. Everybody loves a good turbo 400, but that extra gear and lockup on the converter is a world of difference, and it's going to make a big difference when we go on the power tour. So again, super excited about that. There's some couple things we got to button up. I'll be throwing up another video on the exhaust. We've already done that, but we'll backtrack to it because it was a fun one, and you'll see some good content on that one. So again, appreciate you guys. We'll be throwing up another video here before too long. We'll be keeping this ball rolling, and hopefully we can get this truck 100% before we go on the power tour. So y'all have a good one. We'll see you around.